Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we're taking a look at Paragon by NUGEN Audio. It's a reverb plugin. We're going to be making some atmospheric music with it. Paragon's claim to fame or uniqueness factor is that it is a convolution reverb that does resynthesis. So normally with convolution reverbs, you give them a bunch of impulse responses and you have to change it for every single different space you want to do. Where with Paragon, instead, there are these, if you go over to the impulse response tab, these reverb models, and you can choose from these, and then you can adjust the impulse response, essentially. You can adjust the amplitude and the decay, and this allows you to generate a new impulse response, to resynthesize one so that it is another impulse response. So you don't need to give it different impulses. You can adjust them, and then you use that. So the idea is you don't need a huge folder of impulse responses. You only need some for the spaces you're concerned with. So instead of needing a bunch of concrete rooms or bathrooms or caves or chambers or whatever it is, you can have one and just adjust it to sound like a bunch of other ones. That's the unique factor of Paragon. So when you see some of these profiles in here, we're messing with the impulse response. And then on the main, we have sort of our general controls. Our goal is to make something that allows reverb to stack up big time and can get this reverb time number to go to wild lengths. We're talking 100+ seconds. So what I played at the beginning was not sequenced. It was in real time. I was clicking and moving things as it played, just that I thought would be interesting. But if you were going to do something like this, I would actually chop up the waveform and automate the plugin so that things can stack on top of each other exactly how you want them, and you can create a nice atmospheric track. But I got a little carried away with the actual designing of the patch. So I started out on Wormhole. In fact, let's use that as our starting point. So if you come in here to the browser, there's this one called Wormhole, which always typically kind of means big, crazy sounding thing. And if we play it, this is what it sounds like. That's like chorusy and stuff. That's sort of the vibe. It's still way, way, way too tame. It's nowhere near as crazy. The reverb time is about 7 seconds, 7.5 seconds. That's pretty long. We want to make this bigger. So let's go over to the impulse response. So first we have amplitude. This is like how loud. This is the amplitude of the impulse response. And then we have our decay. And I decided it'd be interesting to really tank the amplitude on the low end and boost the high end just to create this big, interesting contrast. You could try a million shapes here. I recommend just picking an interesting shape, going for it. And then the decay, I just basically pumped the heck up. But not every single one of these is the same. So this is the packing room, which is surprisingly got a pretty long reverb time. If we go back to the main tab, there is a decay profile and we can increase this. So if we go 5 times that, you'll see this spin right here, letting you know that it's thinking and when it's going to update. And most of these things you can adjust and it won't interrupt the audio playback. But if you adjust things on the IR profile, for example, that will change it. It depends on what you're touching. It's kind of a per knob thing on whether or not it's going to actually stop the playback. So right, this gets us to 20 seconds. If we go that high, which is a pretty good range, that would be very usable for what we want to do. But there is one in here that can be going so much further. And that one is the big concrete room. If we click on it, look at the density. And also, if we look at the decay, there's our scale. So we have 1 second, 10 second. If we choose something shorter, like a car, 1 millisecond, it changes dramatically. Like, right, you're not going to get it for here. This is like kind of with Foley in mind, stuff like that. If we go to big concrete room though, that's 10 seconds. And if we pump up our decay to 5 times that, it's thinking, we get to 19 seconds without even adjusting anything quite yet. And now there's 100 seconds at the top. This can get really, really wild. I don't recommend perhaps that you do it this way. Going all the way to 100, that's pretty extreme. But let's go ahead. If you click, you can add nodes. And I'm just going to sort of wipe out this low end. And I'm going to just really boost this high end and give them a pretty wide band. Something like this, just as a shape. not a particular reason. I was experimenting with comb filtering type deals, but these broad shapes just did better. So next, let's give some of these things some pretty big boosts. So I'm gonna really boost the decay profiles here. So now we're gonna be much closer to 100 seconds. And if we go to main and we look at the reverb time, it is still thinking. That is not the reverb time. It's gonna be really long. So there we go, 99 seconds. You can go higher than this, especially if you start stacking them on top of each other like this. And now we're well above this mark and it's thinking again. And whenever you do something this big, it's gonna get a little more crazy as far as how long this is gonna take to go. And just a heads up, there is no panic button. So if you start this reverb, it will go for a long time. And if you hit stop on your, at least in FL right now, if I hit stop, this does not stop. It ducks for a second and then it comes back because it's just a processing reverb, right? And so as a result, I recommend actually adjusting a node or something in order to get the playback to stop. So we've achieved 107.8 seconds, pretty long. If we play a single blip here, let's come in here and play this. Yeah. Now I didn't like having the chorus, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that off. So that's without the chorus. And I mean, it just goes and goes and goes. It can be fun to mess with the width. And this is pretty long. If we add another layer, something else in. And you can sort of begin to build your sonic palette. If we come over here, grab something over here. Now this is maybe a little too long. Let's bring the decay down a bit. Updating. When it updates, with updates like this, it's usually pretty choppy. I can't recall if it's always choppy or not. Like if this causes the reverb to basically reset. Let's find out. Yeah, so that's gonna shut it off. So if you touch this, just be cautious about those things. And what you can do to avoid something like this is to have, if we were to put some sort of a decay or a delay afterwards, like if we come on here and we go to fruity delay 3 or whatever, we add a delay, and this delay has a pretty high feedback rate. And then what we do is we let this play. This is gonna have feedback, and then we can adjust this to be something shorter. It's going to adjust, but this should keep it alive for a little bit. You see that? And we can sort of play with this slider and not have our audio output die every time. You can use this as sort of a global thing. So that's an option if you do want to play with that knob. And also it's kind of useful to know if you have a really long reverb and you're trying to figure out how to stop it. But those are some of the things I like to do when using Paragon. And this is also how you can get just an absurd reverb time. It's worth messing with the other spaces, but obviously some of these will not be capable of doing stuff at that length. Like the car one only goes to a second at 5 times. And so this obviously isn't going to be capable of that unless you really sequence and are very deliberate. Yeah, it's just not really going to be possible. You need something that's really long. Like the hotel room could do it. Anything that can go to like 7 or 8 seconds, you could definitely do with sequencing, but you could improvise and mess around and just have a great time with the concrete room. And if you remember about the delay after, this can allow you to touch controls that might actually reset the reverb without losing the current space you have going on. One other quick tip in your DAW, this is different per DAW, but it's pretty handy if you're going to use this method I'm using to just sort of do it in real time. If you go up to options and then go to your settings and go to your project, there is an advanced tab. Oh no, we don't even know an advanced tab. Go to timing. There will be a PPQ. Every DAW should have this. I've not checked, but PBQ is pulse per quarter, and it stands for how much resolution basically your grid will have. So if you pump this up, it will take more processing. But if this is the only audio input we're going to be using, I could bring it all the way up to 960. This will let me zoom in much further. And some applications will obviously be better suited to doing this. They let you zoom into the sample level like already, where in FL, this is a little more limited. And so that might influence what DAW you choose to do this in as well. That's another thing to consider. I don't find it to be too much of a limiting factor since I want chunks. But occasionally I do want to click on something extremely specific. In FL, the way you could get around this is you could load this in Edison. So if we bring up the control here, and if you hit Control E, it'll actually bring up an Edison for you. Where is it at? It's over there. And we could take this and load it in here. Oh, and we got Paragon coming through, so I just mute it for now. And if you zoom way in, you can go down to the sample level and you can control your playback. You can even pre-select sort of regions before you play them and have it just play the one region. And this can also be a great option if you're going to do this in real time and just sort of have fun with it. But anyways, hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you can use Paragon, some interesting concepts. It's definitely an out-of-the-box use. It's a reverb. So normally you'd use it for reverby stuff, not at making an entire track with it as like the main sound generator. Let me know what you think down below. Is there a step you would add, or would you change this in any way? I am curious to see what you have to say. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.